This is just for anybody, as there's no such thing as rejection. It's just a gentle reminder that your services are not needed today.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Today's guest is a wealth of knowledge, a man who looks deep within and has a great passion for what he does, which is really inspiring. It's also really interesting to see how Albert blends his psychology knowledge and studies alongside running his talent agency and being a talent agent. It's a wonderful blend and really fascinating to hear. Albert's personal growth and desire to keep on growing is also beautiful to hear. I love hearing about this, and I hope you do as well. Before we get into it, Albert has a new book out, Rise Above the Script. Check it out in the episode notes. Okay, let's get into it. Albert Bramante is the CEO of Bramante Artists, where he guides talent across Broadway, film, and television. He's also a psychology professor and certified hypnotist, blending mental performance tools with creative strategy. Lately, he's been teaching creators how to harness AI tools like ChatGPT to boost productivity and content creation. His book, Rise Above the Script, focuses on breaking through fear and building success. With over 20 years of experience at the intersections of psychology, entertainment, and education, Albert has helped countless performers and creators overcome the mental blocks that hold them back. He's worked with actors, educators, and students to push through fear, imposter syndrome, and self-sabotage while building sustainable, purpose-driven careers. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, and we chat about mindset shifts, hypnosis, collaboration, his new book, mastermind groups, combining being a talent agent with psychology, imposter syndrome, Brian Weiss, people-pleasing, accountability, being let go and moving forward, plus plenty more. Before we get into this epic chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out at 3:30 Melbourne, Australian time, with the full video of the podcast to be released the following day. Okay, cool. Thank you. Let's get into it. I had a look at your website and I saw some of the hypnosis audio guides that you have. What are the most popular ones? I'd love to know.
Well, it really depends. The most popular one is just general self-confidence. I have a couple of those that are on the general self-confidence because most of the people I work with are actors and sometimes even just performing artists. So a lot of times they're always putting themselves out there. So it's really the confidence ones that are really seem to be popular. And then, of course, I have some on public speaking and leadership that are doing well, too.
Very interesting. And how did you develop them? Because there's quite a few. They look great. How did you find them?
Well, I selected a lot of things that most people would seek hypnosis for, and I kind of create, a micro experience for them.
Yeah.
That's a much more economic rate, and they can get at least a taste of what hypnosis is like. And so, I use a lot of the standard, a relaxation, getting you into that kind of like flow state. And then I used a lot of typical language when it comes to, the middle of it. And then a couple like generic confidence boosts in each one of them. I've kind of weaved, confidence boosters and all of them. They're very quick. They're only like 15 to 17 minutes, so they're very easily done in a day rather than because some of them can be up to an hour I've seen. So these are just very quick, so they're very easy to do.
Are there any ones that you listen to? Do you just have them playing around in the background before you go to sleep, on a walk, whatever?
I sometimes I do, especially on the productivity ones, or if I have an important meeting coming in there. It's good for me to just to kind of like relax. If I have to give a speech, maybe I'll do the one on public speaking, just to get my confidence level up.
Oh, nice. And so I study kinesiology, and I've heard about a bit about your journey. I'm excited to get into it. And it was met with some people that thought it was a bit ridiculous, and I understand everyone's got their own journey and their own belief systems. I know that you were met with some people that didn't necessarily think hypnosis was as great as I believe it is. How have you dealt with people like that along the way, or people that are just, yeah,
Well, it really depends upon the thing. Now, sometimes if someone's really against hypnosis, I'm not going to really entertain, try to entertain or try to change their mind. It's just, okay, I respect your opinion. That's not how we see it. Um, the main objections I would see, like the really harsh reject, would be the ones that are religious, and that's where I'm just like, okay,
oh, interesting.
I respect your point of view, and I completely respect that, and because I don't want to come off as challenging their religious beliefs, I don't want to do that. I fully 100% respect the beliefs and of each person, so I don't want to negate their religion. Now, what I'll try to counteract with that is say that in 1958, the Catholic Church did allow and sanction hypnosis to be used as a form of, in addition to treatment, traditional treatment.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not, at least by the Catholic Church. Now, maybe some of the more traditional religions, I know a lot of times with Baptist religions, maybe not as accommodating as Catholicism is, but I'll bring that up. And most of the time, I think the objections mainly out of hypnosis are fear.
Interesting. Go on.
It's because you see on TV or you go to a comedy show and you see this guy, on stage, snapping his fingers, and then people are doing some really funny, silly thing.
Yep.
I kind of use that as a teaching moment because the one thing I say is like it's not that they're doing anything against their will. They're actually fully aware of what's going on stage, even though they may appear like they're zoned out. They're not. They're completely aware of everything around them, and they're having fun up there. And I'm like, most of the time, a lot of the people that participate in these types of shows are introverts that want to get out of their shell.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you can take someone who's shy and soft spoken, and for 15, 20 minutes while they're on stage and become completely comfortable, imagine what we can overcome in multiple sessions.
Crazy.
It's using the same process, how much limitations we can overcome. So I think, but again, the biggest objection is fear, and again, sometimes religion. But I would say mainly is fear. Either they're going to get stuck in hypnosis, that that you're going to be a human truth serum if you're under hypnosis, which are all been debunked for decades. That's not true. And then I also go into and I explain that we go into hypnosis, at least the state, but several times a day. Especially if you drive, if you get lost, sometimes you don't realize how far you drove. Like you went from point A to point B, maybe a 45-minute drive, and it just seems like the time went by, like in 5 minutes. Where did the time go? Because you zoned out. You went into a trance, and that's called highway hypnosis. Really, it's what we call it here, at least. You go to cinema, you go to watch a movie. It's fake going in there, but yet you laugh, you cry, you get mad, you get scared by something that's completely fake. But it's creating a genuine emotion in you. That's hypnosis.
It's really
And so
No, you're going on.
No, it's really interesting, and it's every day. We go into this state every day, and that's when people say, well, a lot of people say they're scared of it, or I'll get people say, I can't be hypnotized. I know I'm not. And I already kind of pointed them out and said, you do know that you've been already in the process at least several hundred times. Now, politics, propaganda, that's all hypnosis. Commercials, sales, it's all hypnosis. How many times you go out to the store or go out to the mall and the salesperson gets you to buy something? Same process.
I love this. I think it's so fascinating. I've had a couple of hypnotists on the show as well, and one example I saw. I used to volunteer a few years ago at this community place, and this one lady, she was a quarter of my size, very small, skinny girl, and the hypnotist just got her to bend over on an angle that I don't even know how she held her position because you would fall over, and he's like, imagine you're holding a brick. So she had to bend over even more. And she just held this position for 30 minutes while he went on for the rest of her show. And no human, no matter how strong you are, can hold that position. It blew my mind. And then he got another guy up and he was doing, he's like, pretend you're a chicken and all of that stuff. But as soon as he said, okay, you're like Arnold Schwarzenegger, a bodybuilder, he refused to do it. He just stood still and he wouldn't interact. They're like, take your shirt off, flex. He wouldn't do it. And I asked him afterwards, and he said he didn't want to do that. So you can only really be hypnotized if you want to, I believe. So
Yeah, and well, it has to be consent, number one, and two, you're not going to do anything you're morally opposed to doing in your waking life. I mean, in a normal beta state, which is the normal brainwave state. No matter what level of trance you're in, if you're morally opposed to doing something or uncomfortable doing something, you're not going to do it.
yeah. So how does that work then? We won't discuss politics, but a lot of, on all sides, politicians, they speak with like hypnotic tones. It appears they know how to speak, as you said, advertisements, marketing, they are aware of these concepts. How do we block ourselves from that? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, the one thing is not to react on emotion. That's the one thing, is to look at the logical side of the thing, because especially if you look at the context of sales, most buys are impulsive.
Mm.
I want it now. Okay, and salespeople and marketers know this, the impulsivity, urge to buy impulsively. Um, Also, look for, always take a step back and think more on logic rather than emotion, especially with like marketers and marketing, because there's a lot of hypnotic processes in marketing that we can easily get trapped into. The fear of missing out, the law of scarcity, that the supplies are limited. Buy in the next 15 minutes to secure this discount. Or buy in the next 10 minutes, or we can't guarantee that this thing will be available anymore. Or buy in 15 minutes because this product is so forbidden and so great, the marketers are going to take it down. The videos are going to be taken down. I did. Oh, it was funny because I sometimes, like, my email will build up and then my spam mail will build up, and I'll open up an email like 4 months that was dated 4 months ago, and it will say the same thing: download in the next 15 minutes, or you'll never be able to buy the product. And I click on the link, and it's 4 months old. The email, mind you, the link is still available by the product. It's a ploy because, again, I don't want to miss out. My subconscious doesn't want to miss out, and therefore I'm going to rush out to buy the product. We can't, either we know that we're not going to have that we can have, or that we're not going to have anytime soon. Even growing up, I can't tell you how many times I saw adverts on TV, advertisements that were saying like this furniture store is going out of business.
Yep.
Yeah, same one. I'm like, this is amazing. Either something's wrong here, or somehow it's getting resurrected, and then next week it's back at it going out of business again. I can't. Again, it's that principle. Another thing to be careful about is the lure of the free item, the free gift,
Oh, go on.
the free seminar, the free, this, that, because what we're bound. One of the principles, and this is, been bound by marketers and influencers is the idea of reciprocity. So if I'm giving you something for free, I'm hitting the obligation trigger
Yep.
that you now feel obliged to do something for me. So now when I ask you to buy something or do something, you're going to do it. So, and also adding on to that are little actions that are small, asking you to do something small in the beginning.
Yep.
Oh, just sign up for my email list. Sign up for this petition. There you go. Just sign. Okay, great. Now, next, and there's nothing unethical about it. It's just a principle. It's, what you do with this is different. I mean, we all do this as marketers. Okay, sign up here for this email list. Here's a free gift or free, something very simple. So now you buy it, and now you get the free thing, and you think, this is nice people. Okay, so now comes a little thing. Or when you're on the internet and you buy this $7.27 ebook, what's on the next page? Offer number 2. Slightly more money. Okay, well, I'm already in that Myers mode, and because now I'm going to add language in there that really makes you be convinced that the real product is here, not what you just bought. And before you know it, that $7.27 item that you just bought is now running you $300, $400, $500.
Yep.
And you don't even know what happened. It's just, okay, next. And next thing you know, even like an hour later, like, what did I just do? Or you go to that, we're giving you a free lunch, and then when you're doing lunch, okay, here comes the sales pitch.
Yeah, you see with the what are they called? Oh, to the tip of my tongue, where they try and sell you 2 weeks at a holiday destination. Just come to this free thing or this free seminar. Yeah,
yeah, it's like a timeshare.
timeshare.
Free seminar. We'll give you a lunch. Well, yeah, it's all of this. And then when you go there, it's like, okay, a little bit of hard selling and pressure, a little bit of pressure selling there. It was funny. I got a call like maybe 5 years ago, random telemarketer, telling me I just won this 2-week trip. Okay, tell me more. I won the trip, but I still need to pay taxes. I still need to pay my hotel. I won the trip, the excursions and all this, and then I got to pay cater, and I'm sitting there going like, if I break down the fees at the end of this thing, what you're telling me, I'll probably pay even more than I would have paid had I booked the trip myself. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, here's a strategy. I think most people that might be duped by this. You want a free trip. Those words would have triggered. And I think, so the important thing is that I think take a step to the logic and maybe instead of buying right now, wait an hour, wait 2 hours. If you still want it, great. But don't let emotion take over.
It's a really powerful lesson because you see it with every single person on the planet. They turn on the TV, they're triggered, we react via emotion. You just hear a story, we get reacted. It's something, we react. It's something I've worked really hard on. I still got a long ways to go, where just being calm, taking a breath. I know you meditate, or I believe you meditate. Are these some of the tools that we can do to just help us not react? Because we live in this, I wouldn't say trigger culture, but a very reactive culture. And no one really talks about how that's not necessarily the best place to be. Not just because you're going to buy something, but just because of the emotion.
Yeah. Well, and again, not to get too political, but let's look at 2020. What happened during then. How people it was such a polarizing thing worldwide. And you had people from all over sides, of the thing that were extremely fearful. I mean, I heard a lot of people that were saying, like, I'm never going to go out to a restaurant again. or I'm never going to interact with people again
Oh, yeah.
because of the fear appeals that was kept happening.
Yeah.
You turn on the news and you had the death count. Okay, this many people died today, and it's like, okay. Now again, everybody has their viewpoint, but I'm like, do we really have to be having a death clock on every channel?
I agree.
You
We
know,
had that as well. It's
ser-
crazy.
seriously, do we really need that? And because what really got, I think, kind of, and again, I'll be honest, what triggered me, and that was, okay, yes, it was a serious time, but what if you had people that were traumatized already watching this, that were dealing
Yeah.
with their own significant traumas? All you're doing now is really making this worse, and secondary, and just re-traumatizing people, and that again is something that, you know I sometimes I tell a lot of people, I'm like, just turn off the news, turn it off, and look at, cat videos, read books, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, great.
Just don't look at the news, because again, it's going to be re-traumatizing. But again, that's hypnosis for you. The process. Again, they don't, obviously, the news media doesn't call it hypnosis, but that's the process. When
Or
it brings up these
television.
emotions,
Yeah.
television in general.
Yeah. Well, tell a vision. And also, it's designed. I remember reading about it, like TV, for example. It's designed, or news is designed to be fearful because that's how you get. They believe that's how you get people to come back. I don't believe that.
Yeah, well, it depends upon, I think, like, because a group of us that I think that are, trained in like hypnosis and NLP, weren't really affected that much emotionally, because we kind of saw what was going on. I mean, I was
Cool.
like, this is some amazing mass hypnosis going on.
Yeah.
Now, had I not been, trained in this, I probably would have been just like everybody else, like fearful, and all of this. And I'm like, this is just amazing here about how this is so effective. And I'm like, these are prints. I'm like, this is what's, and I'm able to like name, okay, this is what's going on here, anchoring, all of that. It's like, this is scary. So what's happening? Not necessarily scary what was happening, but scary at the manipulation tactics I was seeing here.
For people that don't know the hypnosis, I'm curious because that's a very interesting statement that you just said. For the people that, could kind of take a step back and not, dive into fear straight away, did they just have like an inherent understanding of psychological principles and hypnosis, or was it just, it's too hard to summarize and generalize? Or was it more
It's,
around
I mean,
emotions?
it's more about emotions. I mean, getting someone to experience it, because also I think if I'm in a group of people and I'm giving a lecture about hypnosis, I think it's great to do the theory behind it and all that.
Yeah.
But it's also sometimes good to experience the emotional change, the emotional shift, and seeing, okay, it's one of the things that, even when, you're in a class learning about hypnosis or NLP, it's better to kind of actually do the work
Yeah.
than to hear about it theoretically. Because in itself, if I just gave people a lecture about, well, this is your subconscious, people are going to get bored. It's like, okay. And that's why, like, I feel like why the stage hypnosis shows are popular, because that's the only way to kind of make hypnosis entertaining. Clinical hypnosis can be boring as, you can be if you
Yeah.
actually were there. You're like, okay, this is boring because it's not, there's nothing sensational about it. It's just an ordinary, process of just, getting someone to focus on their thoughts. You'll see the stage hypnotist shows, the comedy shows, making people do outlandish things because to make it interesting, and keep your attention.
With kinesiology, they don't use the word hypnosis, but it is looking deep within your subconscious and your beliefs and seeing what's kind of being stirred up. And that kind of blew my mind because I never had this language before, the subconscious belief systems, all of these things. Then later on, I don't know if you know, like Brian Weiss or Brian Weiss, depending on how people say
Yes.
it. And I've been hypnotized by him, and he did a mass hypnosis from like 400 people. And then those experiences blew my mind. But should we maybe go back to start? Because you were a professor of psychology. How did you discover this? And then did hypnosis come later on, or was it something you're aware of before?
I was always curious. What um, happened? Well, a couple of things happened. I think drew me to hypnosis was when I was in grad school. When I was going for my master's degree, I specialized in marriage and family therapy,
Okay.
and a lot of the models of marriage and family therapy were solution focused rather than drawn out clinical therapy. So we're talking like the works of like Milton Erickson and Virginia Satir, who may not have necessarily referred to themselves as traditional hypnotists at the time, but a lot of their processes that were used are now used readily in NLP and hypnosis. So I was found myself drawn to that, even not knowing what it was, not knowing what exactly this was in a sense. And then also I did a stage show. I was a part of a stage show. It was in my early 20s. I was very curious. It's that, they called me up they called up, people volunteers, let me give it a shot. And I walked into it with an open mind. I had because I was like, let me see what this is all about.
Yeah.
And so I participated fully in the exercises that were done, like in the warm up and what they call the induction and the deepener, which is like the beginning of the process. You have to participate in some exercise. So I did the mental exercises that they told me to do, this told me to do, and I found myself really enjoying the process.
Cool.
And I think two things that really stood out for me. Number one, I was always in control. Even though the hypnotist may stop the string and sleep, I would fold over, of course, but I voluntarily did that because I felt like doing it. Not really, I didn't really put two and two together that it was a command, but I just really felt the urge to do that. To, like pull forward and put my head, close my eyes.
Yeah.
But I was aware of everything. And the biggest thing that really sold me on it was I had a lot of stage fright. I wasn't paralyzed, but I had a lot of stage fright. When I would speak, I was comfortable as could be doing some really outlandish things, but I felt so comfortable on stage. And when I came out of trance, when it was over, I felt a sense of endorphin rush, euphoria
Wow.
that I haven't experienced in a long time. So I was like on a natural high for hours afterwards.
Whoa. Oh, that's crazy.
And I was like, I've got it. What just happened? This was amazing. And so I that was kind of like what got me curious. And then I kind of put it behind because even the mental health community at that time, it's getting a little more mainstream now, but 20 something years ago, hypnosis wasn't really considered acceptable form of therapy. As a matter of fact, now I look, after a while, a memory popped in. When I was a senior in college, we had to take a senior seminar in psychology. And one of the assignments was to do a presentation on a field of therapy that we found interesting. Everybody had to choose something different. It was a small class. So I remember I wrote hypnotherapy. I don't know what prompted me to write that. And I remember my professor, who was a straight up experimental research buttoned up psychologist, looked at me, looked at the card, and said, "This is garbage. Pick something else."
Wow.
And it was something that I think that even made me more curious. Like, okay, what's so, because I saw like a visceral reaction in him, like disgust, and I'm like, this is now more interesting. Like, what is so disgusting about this? And then, of course, as I was doing my studies and I was finishing up my clinical degrees, like a PhD, I started becoming very disillusioned with the disease model of just pathologizing people and diagnosing them and keeping them stuck in that disease state or the disease model. And again, I completely respect and honor and loved my training, but it was just I was not feeling aligned with the disease model anymore.
Yep.
Of straight up clinical psychology. So I then I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I was starting to have a bit of an identity crisis where it's like, well, I spent all this money for a clinical psychology degree. So I then happened to reading an article in Psychology Today, and there was an advertisement for a video course, Learn Hypnosis. And I remembered now my experience years back. I said, well, let me give it a shot. And so it was a brief video course, obviously nothing that would really prepare me to do hypnosis, but learn more about it. So I was like, I'm intrigued. And then you speak of Brian Weiss. I was also vaguely interested in the past life work,
Cool.
past life regression. So I was like, okay. And then I saw another video class for this past life regression. Okay. And this was through a college at HMI, which is Hypnosis Motivation Institute in California, which is a very prestigious school in the United States, but distance ed. So I did their past life certification class. Now, I found it interesting, but I also knew it wasn't, nearly enough to qualify me to do any type of work. Even though I had the certificate in my hand, I said, you know what I do? There was actually in New York where I'm based out of. There was a 3-day past life certification class in person. I said, well, let me go take this.
Cool.
And then I became very interested in that. I said, okay, even though I didn't have any traditional hypnotherapy training, I did watch a lot of videos on YouTube and all that. I said, let me then enroll. They were offering a couple of months later a 3.5-month clinical hypnotherapy program, the same school in person. I said, let me do this. It was a 150-hour program.
Wow.
And so I did that, and it was like so powerful. And then it was like one of those things and I don't think I'll ever go back. And so I've been always just interested in that. But initially started with traditional psychology and then moving on to hypno. But the thing about with hypnosis and NLP is there's so much overlap between psychotherapy, like even classical psychotherapy techniques, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy and hypnotherapy. And also with studying NLP, and this is very somewhat I don't want to say controversial, but it's there. When I was in my girlfriend and master's degree, we were introduced to this model of therapy called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization response.
Yeah.
Now, the traditional psychologists were like, you cannot do this work until you are licensed and you have months and months of training. And then I go to an NLP seminar and they're like, okay, we're going to teach you EMDR. You can do it in an hour. Like, say what? And then a lot of people were saying that the founder of the therapeutic EMDR, Francis Shapiro, actually borrowed it and stole it from Richard Bandler and Grinder, who from NLP. I was like, this is interesting. I'm not going to get involved in this debate, but this is really interesting.
Yeah. Okay, I've got so many questions. I don't even know where to start. But also, I admire your curiosity because when you see a mentor or a figurehead and they're like, hypnotherapy is rubbish or whatever he or she said, and then you're like, that makes me more curious. Often when we get dismissed or rejected or someone goes, this is baloney, we go, okay, I guess it might be. But that actually made you more curious. That's a very rare trait. Where did that come from? Because that's pretty exciting to hear.
Well, I think I always had like a streak of rebellion in me. Like that's why I've always worked for myself. I mean, I do teach, so like I do work for a college, but I don't like working for people, and I don't like being told what to do. And that's where I think that comes into it too. Was like, okay, you tell me not to do something. Now what you just made it. I'm very curious now. So I wasn't like a rebellious kid. I was a good, well behaved, but I didn't like being micromanaged. I didn't like being, even to this day, I don't, it's not for me. So I think that was kind of like where that started. Plus, I'm just curious about the mind. I just always had a curiosity thing. Like even as a child, I can't tell you how many times I would be scolded or chastised because I was nosy.
Oh, really? It's a trait that's
I mean,
actually quite positive, and then we get punished for it at
now
school.
I look at it as a badge of honor. Like I'm like, yeah, I am no, and I'll tell people up front, like, yeah, I'm letting you know I'm nosy. Um, but I'm just, it's not, and I look at that and I reframe it now because it's more about, no, nosy sounds a negative connotation. What about just curious? And wanting to know more, inquisitive. I want to know more. I want to learn. I want to know what's going on. And that's the whole thing too. Is like I just want to know things, I'm just curious.
I love that. I think it's such an important trait. And as I said, a lot of kids are curious. And then if you speak out or you get into trouble, the school model can kind of, dismiss that. And I think it's such an important skill, curiosity, asking questions. But sometimes it's not, that seen as that important early on, but it's a crucial skill. But also, what's really interesting is you were and maybe you still are as now, but you said that you were a college professor at one stage.
And
And
well, I still have, yeah. I only part time now, but I was full time in a month for a while.
And your learnings from this experience is crazy. It sounds like you're already a very curious person, but after this experience, it sounds like it went tenfold or hundredfold. And I'll just give a bit of a snapshot, but I believe that you were doing the job you said of like 200 people, that you had people pleasing tendencies, and then one day they changed your position or made you redundant. I forget the wording, and that kind of led you to a big change. Can you give a bit of context on
Sure.
what you learned?
Well, the biggest thing for me, the biggest habit I had to overcome was that people pleasing thing, the agreeableness, the highly agreeable, ness. When I started the my full time teaching experience is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned
Oh, wow.
in that field. So I was teaching. I was hired as an adjunct in 2003, part time, which is part time instructor at this college, and then in 2000, late 2007, early 2008, three faculty members were retiring all together in the same department. They needed to fill three positions. So, and I already was doing very well as a part timer. So they kind of told me, my chairperson kind of came to me and said, "There's a position opening up. Please apply." And I did, and I got the job. And of course, being a young person, I really was so happy and thrilled. I was tenure. It was a tenure track position. It's amazing. Well, I wanted to make my bosses and everybody happy, which nothing, wrong with that. But there was apparently a major shortage, not only with just professors, because the full time load, teaching load at this college was five classes a semester, 15 credit hours, five courses. So naturally, I got my five courses, and then I started getting emails every day prior to the semester beginning. This class is open. Can you teach that? This class is open. Can you teach that? Sure, 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 sure. Give it to me. Yes. And this happened for several semesters. It really, if you take a step back, there was that moments where, again, the average course load for a full-time professor is five courses now. There were semesters where I had up to 11 or 12 classes, which is an insane amount of classes. I'm not going to lie, the money was decent. I wasn't making almost double the rate I was making, would have made, but I wanted to people to and it was not just to teach the classes. They committees needed to be filled. Sure, put me on this committee. Yes, I'll do this committee, that committee. And after about the third year, out of nowhere, I think I just got a massive amount of burnout.
Oh, I can see why when you're doing all of that.
Physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, I was just fried, like completely. I literally, people in my life were about to do interventions on me because it was that bad. I was sleeping all the time, irritable. I was a zombie. pretty much. And I'm not going to lie, my job suffered because I started dropping the ball on things,
Yeah.
which naturally happens with being spread too thin. So the climax or the turning point that really made me rethink things was, a couple of processes happened. They changed administration in the middle of this. Completely new administration. They're president, vice president, provost, like, all new, completely outside externally from the college. Well, I knew there was a bit of trouble coming in. It was my intuition telling me because they came in and they were going to do some massive cuts.
Yeah. Okay.
And all I remember going, I don't like this. So it was the beginning of the end of my fourth year, which is right about the time that they start preparing you for your 10-year review. And I remember getting told, overhearing my department chair saying that they just asked every department to cut 2 people from their roles and let them go.
Yeah.
Well, guess you can kind of tell who was one of the 2, and I remember I came home. I was at a training weekend. I was doing a medical hypnosis certification class. I came home on a Sunday night, and I see a letter from my college, and my heart just sunk because I'm like, okay, if I'm seeing official correspondence coming to my home, this can't be good. And I open it up and saying, we're not, reappointing you. And to make matters worse, they wrote a boilerplate like memo, and I learned this is boilerplate later on. But it was like, we're letting you go because of deficient academic performance. That's all. So I remember going in the next day. I was in shock
Yeah, of course.
because no one communicated with my department. Because I walked in the next day with my chair pulling me aside, going, "I have some classes for you to teach in the fall."
Whoa.
And I went, I was like, "Yeah, we have a problem." And I showed her the letter. She's like, "They didn't even notify her that I was being let go." The administration made that call. So the way to fight that, because the one thing that they didn't, the administration didn't even read the contract, because the contract says that if you're let go during the 4th year as a faculty member, you're allowed the extra year as a severance paid at work, like a terminal year is what they call it. So because initially they told me my last day was like this. I got the letter on May 1st. They told me my last day was like May 15th.
Whoa.
But this time, my contract said they couldn't do that. My last day would have to be May of next year. So I was able to get that at least. And I did get some legal help, counsel, because I didn't necessarily want to go full on litigation. But at the same time, I also wanted to clear my name, like get that letter of deficient academic performance out of my record.
Yeah.
At least let me go out in neutral ways, or even make it like I decided not to stay there. But at least let me go out neutrally, and I was able to successfully do that. But it was ironic too because I got the notification I was being canned. The next day, or not the next day, next week, I get another letter from the foundation that I was just awarded the 2012 Teachers Excellence Award.
Congratulations. That's crazy.
I'm like, this is great. Okay, so in my right hand, I'm getting congratulated for being an excellent teacher, and in my left hand, I'm being canned for being a poor teacher. Tell me,
Make it make sense.
what's going on? Make this make sense, people. And I remember when I went to my council, like academic council and union, to kind of like say what was going on, and I showed them both letters. They started bursting out laughing. This is ridiculous. I'm like, okay, well, but it taught me a lesson, because going back, and the serious lesson was, I don't know what the outcome would have been had I set boundaries and been firm, could have still been the same outcome.
Yeah.
Quite possibly. Could have been the same outcome. But it would save me a lot of things. And now, of course, I did a lot of research and even consulting with experts. And the one thing I learned what stopped me from people pleasing was it rarely, if at all, gets you the effect that you really want to do. It actually can cause people to resent you even more,
That's a very
or
interesting insight.
lose respect for you. You know,
Yeah.
and so, and I've seen this with several times, and also it can just cause people to um, even themselves act passive aggressively too. The people leaders themselves, because then you start wondering, well, I did all this for everybody, and look what they did to me. They're not respecting, and then you start acting passively aggressively, which makes the matter even worse. So that kind of got me really. It was like a wake up call to stop people pleasing.
That is a crazy story. And I love how like you took accountability of yourself, but you also recognize, your own great work, because often it can be one or the other as well. And you've done a lot of
Yeah,
learnings there and shifts. That's brilliant. And getting that teaching award at the other stage, that blows my mind. How did you move forward from that? Because obviously, once you get like kind of legal involved, you're stressed. You said that there was almost an intervention for you. Obviously, you've made some powerful shifts. What were some of the things that you did to, get over that tough period?
well, it took a while, but I knew I was walking out of there, out of the college, out of there with my head high and everything high, because I had the award. Now, it wasn't the first award. I had several awards throughout my time there. I had at least 50 sets of evaluations over the years there of classes where I was being accoladed by students. I had so many dozens of letters from students that I saved that tell me how much the course changed their life.
Oh, great. Congratulations.
So I thank you, and I think that was what kept me grounded. Like, okay, this wasn't wasted. I did something good here, and then maybe it was time. Obviously it was meant for me to go. It was time to go. So I think that was just kind of like knowing that it wasn't me. It wasn't always purely on me.
Yep.
I did something right. I really, made a difference. And that was what kept me going. And it was just, it took a while because even in my life too, like when I was dating, when I was in my 20s, I would always I was very clingy now that I look back at it. Very clingy, very emotional, and it didn't work. And now this didn't work. So I was like, how much am I going to really, hit over the head with the same lesson? This isn't working. So now, and I still teach now, but it's part-time and it's obviously another college.
Yep.
But I'm very much less involved. When I say less involved, I only do what's asked of me. I don't volunteer anymore unless I really want to volunteer for it, if I really feel it's something I want to do. And even with my students, I'm more of a boundary, setting mode. When I was first teaching, I gave my students my cell phone number, like, give me a call, if you have anything. I don't do that anymore. I stopped. I was like, you got my email address from the college? That's the best way to get a hold of me. I check that daily and I'll get back to you. And I'm still getting those letters from students that the course has been great and changed their life. So
Nice.
it was just learning to set boundaries, and that's so important. And it's not just, I think it's even for my own sanity too.
So how does it feel now? You've set boundaries. I used to be a massive people pleaser. I've done a lot of work on it. For me, once I've kind of set boundaries, although it's uncomfortable at the start, you feel a little bit, you still have those tendencies. But now I think
Right.
do it pretty effectively. I feel much stronger within. And I don't mean stronger like I'm better than anyone. I just feel this like divine connection almost. And so I actually think my relationships are better with the ones that I want to have relationships with because I'm being more true to myself. What have you noticed with yourself?
That I have a better relationship with myself, and I feel better. And I think, I never really had to like enforce the bound. I think it was just once I said it, people just no, didn't. I didn't like have to be like always telling people no. It was like people just understood that. I
Yeah.
think. Um, and even if I do say something, like I'm very not, very professional about it. If I don't, I'm like, look, it's not working for me at the moment, but I'll find or I'll help you in other ways. How can I help you? But this idea is not working, or I don't have the time to do that. And but I can help in other ways, and then um, and most of the time it's respectful because I think initially my whole thing was, oh, they're going to be so disappointed in me. They're, if I say no, and this was just personally and professionally, I was just so worried about people were just going to be so disappointed in me. And now come to the conclusion, I think it may be just maturity too, where I'm like, well, if they're going to be disappointed from my be putting my needs first, I don't think these are people I want to be associated with anymore.
That's a great realization. And in terms of, you've described this situation as a blessing. Obviously, it allowed you to look at the people pleasing tendencies, but it's very rare in life where we can go through an extremely stressful period and come out on the other end. Not many people do that, but you've come out and said it was a blessing. I'd love to know a bit about why you see it that way. I think that's great.
Well, a blessing because remember when I got to have the experience. Two, it helped me learn because I might have still been in that trap, of people pleasing, and even coming from the idea of resilience is,
Mm.
a lot of times our hardships can really be the best things that can happen to us because it got me to do what I love. Got me to study hypnosis more. It got me to finish my dissertation. It got me to, now that I got to build up my talent agency even more. So there were a lot of stuff that was good now that I wasn't teaching. I still missed it, and that's why I went back, but I do it part time. I wanted to go back to teach again. And then I remember one of my previous students um, said a remark that really stood with me. And, because I remember when the fall semester after I was gone, I sent the message out because I was still connected with a lot of my students on Facebook. I said, I want to wish everyone a really happy semester, fall. I'm not, even though I'm not teaching anymore, I'm still rooting for you. And somebody commented saying, "You're always still going to be a teacher. You may not be teaching here at the moment." And I was like, that moved me profoundly. I was like, okay, and that just kept me moving.
That's brilliant. And from the talent agent perspective, when does that come into play? I believe psychology was first. How do you decide to, you're first dabbling, but how do you get into that and create, your own agency?
Yeah, I was very interested in the creative arts in school. I was in a drama club in high school. I took some classes in undergrad in theater. And so I was very interested in acting and performing and not necessarily, I think I just like the process. And so I kind of, after I received my master's degree, I started hanging around like in New York City, which is like a big hub for performers and actors. And I started meeting more actors, and I started like, let me see if I can pursue acting. So I did a little bit of acting myself, but for me, I found myself wanting to connect. I'd meet an actor, and then on one set, and then meet an actor on another set. I'm like, yeah, I think you guys should meet. And I was just always finding my ways to connect people to each other. And
Ah,
then when I would look for casting notices for myself to apply to, if I remembered an actor, I would be circling them and sending them an email like, you should apply to this job. You should apply to that job. And then one of the that said, I wish you were my agent. And that started to get the wheels turning because I really don't want to act so much anymore. I was like, well, let me become an agent. So, here I am. And that's how that got started.
and then I love the blend, and you speak about this a lot in your book, which we'll talk about as well in your other interviews, the blend between acting and mindset shifts and beliefs, which it doesn't just apply to actors, it applies to life. What have you noticed with actors where you wanted to incorporate, your some of the psychological principles?
Well, for me, with acting, what when I first started like really operating the agency, the issue that I kept running into were actors were self-sabotaging. They were shooting themselves in the foot constantly, consistently, and I couldn't figure out why. Why was this happening? And then when it came down again, when I was in the middle of my PhD program, it came time to focus on a dissertation, which is solve a real problem. And so I decided to, well, I'm going to, why don't I figure out what's going on with these actors? And so that kind of laid the groundwork for my book, because my dissertation was in self-defeating behavior in performing artists, which became the foundation for my book, Rise Above the Script.
Oh, that was okay. That's so great. I love this. This is you're speaking my language. But also, you're working in the psychological field. It's pretty courageous of you to then, want to do something else as well. You could just purely focus on that area, but you actually pursued your passion as well. And I don't believe you just started your agency. I'm sure there were steps along the way, but what were some of the hardships? How did you get to your own talent agency?
Well, no, that was one of the things I think might, looking back, when I first started, I did start cold, with no real official idea roadmap. And what I should have done, because most people who are agents, follow the traditional path. Well, they'll work as an assistant for a couple of years, then get maybe promoted to like a junior agent,
Yeah.
and then an agent, and then separate and operate, open up their own agency after being an agent for several years at another established agent. I didn't do any of that. I made a lot of mistakes, of course, as you know, and I had to build a lot of my connections organically. It took me a long time to see any momentum. And I think if I were to go back in time, that probably would be the one thing I would change, or I would have worked for somebody else. But again, as I was saying earlier, I'm not the type that likes to work for people. So I think that was like my motivation. Well, I'm going to do it all myself. Realizing that may not have been the most optimal choice, but it still got me to
Probably the
where I
best
am
choice
now.
for you, yeah. Because, as you said, everyone goes down one way, but, looking just a small snapshot of your life, you've done it your way, and that's why it's been great. But if you follow someone else, and, I don't know, I'm just making this up, but if you are the assistant and, sending or, maybe the emails are doing some things you might perceive as tedious, maybe you wouldn't have been a talent agent. You know what I mean? Like you did it your way.
I could, yeah, exactly. No, and maybe the other side of it would have been, well, maybe I would have had more of an earlier success rate when I opened up my first company, because I would have already had contacts. I would have already had a network, which I didn't have. Again, everything was just cold, out in the open. So
I think that's exciting. And one of your quotes, I love your quotes because, part of the podcast is, the failure side. What do you always say to actors about rejection? I think this is really powerful.
So the one way, and this is just for anybody, is there's no such thing as rejection. It's just a gentle reminder that your services are not needed today. And I don't remember the source of that quote, but I actually read that out of an NLP book, a book years ago about NLP. So I was like, that's a very like NLP-esque type of statement, reframing. So that was like really powerful. Probably the
It's
most powerful quote I've ever read, that I ever experienced.
because when I heard you say that, it's so powerful because it takes away, that feeling of failure or disappointment, rejection, all those negative feelings. Because as you've said, there might be 1,000 people, 100 people, 10,000 people applying for a role. Just wasn't meant for you. Only one person get the role. You weren't right for that role. And you can apply that in every aspect of life. So I'm wondering, is that something that you kind of live by as well, even though you're not an actor per se, but the rejection
Yeah,
side?
I mean, when people tell me no, I'm like, okay, that's, I don't take it personally like I used to. It's like, no, it's not, no. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's the way it is.
That's great because I think if what I've learned, and although it might sound a bit potentially controversial, when you live an authentic or you try to live an authentic path to yourself, you try to live your best life and you're being respectful of others, that's not for everyone. It's some people aren't going to like that because it's going to show up triggers or a mirror, all of that stuff. And most of the time, it has nothing to do with you. As long as you're being respectful and caring, you'll realize that it will kind of clash with other people. And I always, going back
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
yeah.
So say no, I fully agree with you there on that one.
And so, like, going back with like people pleasing tendencies, when I have been like that, it doesn't work. But now, yeah, it's so powerful. And another example that springs to mind, and I love your lessons from this as well. I believe you had a split from a talent agent a little while ago, and I love your insights around this. And you said that a lot of your worries and fears, you have a lot of worries and fears when you're going through a breakup of any kind. But then afterwards, you realize that none of your fears and worries actually came into fruition. So, can you tell me a bit about that?
Sure. So this happened in 2023. 2021, just to backtrack, I had taken my agency and merged it with another agent, and we became a powerful, like a two-person agency. We combined our names, our agency names, and it didn't, I'm not going to talk that, it wasn't working out as a partnership. It was like we were two different people, had two different work styles. And so in 2023, I said, I think it's time to split, and then, so it took a while, like this was made months before it actually happened because it took us months to partner up with all the paperwork and all that's going to do the same to kind of dissolve, the partnership. So I was always worried, like, oh, what are these actors going to think? They're going to be so unhappy. I'm going to lose everybody. And no one, people are going to question, people are going to, judge me harshly. And we finally made the announcement like 2 months before the actual official separation to everyone on the roster and everybody kind of like in the community that we were splitting up.
Yeah.
I think maybe a few people reached out and said, "Oh, what happened?" Everybody wrote me immensely. Like, good luck to you. I'll support you. Let me know what you need. Um, and it was, wow, I wasn't even 10% of what I was fearing. I did lose some clients. I did lose some actors that were like wanting to stay with my partner.
Yeah.
Fine. But it wasn't that bad. It was like, okay, moving on. And when I look back and I'm like, I don't know why I was so worried. I'm like, it wasn't even 10% of what I was worried about what actually happened. It was, and I think that was just because I was just even going back to like an NLP model, distorting and generalizing. I was just, well, this is going to be the end. This is going to be worse. And I was like, it wasn't bad. And so that's why I kind of like use it to help people. I'm like, look, a lot of stuff you're worrying for, it's not that bad. It's going to be okay. And you'll be fine. You're going to survive.
And also the stress of being in, I have no idea who this person is, but the stress of being in a bad relationship of all types, that causes stress at a level that we don't even probably understand. And so by ending a
Right.
relationship,
And it was actually, and her and I are still on great terms. We still,
brilliant.
I mean, we still, email each other like, once or twice a month. We see each other. It's very cordial. Um, but we did it because it was tense, and we didn't want to get to a point where there was a lot of resentment and animosity. It was like, okay, this is the time to do it. And it was better for both of us. I'm going to be honest. It was better for both of us. It was better for her and it was better for me
Yeah.
to do it.
It's also smart because you can still have a positive relationship. You can go, this relationship's not working, but this other relationship's working. And
right. We're just not meant to work together. But we're so cool.
Yeah.
It's just we're not. It's not meant for us to work together anymore. That was it. That was it. That was all it was. They've had it, that's the way I look at it. I still respect her greatly as a person. I'm sure she feels the same about me, and it's a great relationship.
That's a huge credit to you because when relationships end, we see it all the time. I don't want to talk about the lady. I'm just saying about you. When relationships
Yeah,
end, like generally as partners, this person said that they do that. We can go in that negativity. We can blame the other person. We can sometimes
yeah.
shift accountability. And for you to speak so positively about that person is a huge credit to you and the work you've done on
Well,
yourself as
thank you.
well.
And it's all about accountability, because if I'm going to sit here and blame her, I got to look in the mirror. There's stuff that it can easily be, okay, what was I doing? And that's what I learned too with accountability. Even in situations where clearly even other person may be in the wrong, and in situation, there's elements that we have done too by even just allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between accountability and blame. I'm not blame, but I'm taking my accountability. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm not perfect. She's not perfect, but it is what it is. And that was like the way it is. I mean, I don't, and it was just it was easy. It was much easier. It was easier on the client who we work with. And, it was just, all good all around. And that's one thing I was thankful for too, that it wasn't.
I love your insights and mindset. That's very powerful. That also leads, because we've spoken a lot about various different principles, and I want to hear about your book because a lot of the principles, as I said, you incorporated in your book as well. So many questions on it.
Yeah.
How rewarding was it when you finally finished? Because I believe you started a few years ago. There's a lot of, I'm going to be a writer, but then we don't put pen to paper, or we can kind of leave it
Uh,
away. Tell me all.
well, I was kind of dealing with my own imposter syndrome, and I would sit in front of a blank page, try to write it, and then I would delete it. And then I went to doing a really, I want to say for me, some people it works. It was very foolish for me. I thought initially I was going to get a ghostwriter.
Oh,
I went on
interesting.
Fiverr and I hired two ghostwriters. And what they gave me back was uh, crap, and that's to say it nicely. Um, I remember reading this and like my mouth hit the floor. I'm like, this is bad because whoever wrote this neither had no knowledge of the entertainment industry and had no knowledge about psychology.
Mm.
I'm like, I can't put my name on this. So I wound up like, it was a bit of an expensive lesson for me. Um, Back to square one again, and it was early 2023, and I remember I was part of a self-publishing mastermind, and my
Yes.
mentor, who had written 15 books already,
Whoa.
self-published nonfiction books, had kind of told me that 1%, only 1% of people actually write a book who say they're going to write a book, and the biggest mistake, which is something I was doing, was self-editing when you're writing. So I would write a couple of sentences, go back, reread those sentences, and then get mad at myself and delete them. And the one thing that he had told me to stop doing that. Don't self-edit until you're completely done. And when I did that, that was a game changer because all I did was I said and I blocked out my time, in the evenings. It was 90 minutes, because at that time when I started writing, we were dealing with the writer's strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike in the United States. So my work as an agent was kind of like at a standstill.
Yeah.
And it was also during the summer, so I really wasn't teaching. So I was like, I have a lot of time. Let me devote 2 hours in the evening to writing. I already had my dissertation. I had an outline. I had a foundation already. So let me just do it. And I did this for about 6 weeks, with the 2 hours a day, and I had my manuscripts.
That's so crazy. And also the shift, because I do screenwriting And in the amount of times I've heard people go, I'm a screenwriter, and you are a screenwriter. And they're like, what have you written? And like, oh, I haven't written today. And then that you meet that person, 6 months later, I haven't written anything today. Just putting pen to
Yeah.
paper is the hardest. But also from the mastermind group, because I've been thinking about this for a while, I'd love to know what made you actually put your hand up and do it. And you said you also learned a lot about accountability being in a mastermind group.
Well, again, hearing that statistic was like, wow, okay. Yeah. Um, I better write a book or else I'm going to be like that boy who cried wolf and say, that I'm writing a book and I don't have a book. So I just did it. And another thing with the accountability thing that kind of really like shifted my perspective. I was so worried that I'm going to get these negative reviews, these 1 or 2 star reviews on Amazon. People are not going to like it. And then my mentor brought it out to me. He said, well, if you don't have a book at all, you're never going to know.
And you know what? Sorry?
You'll never know if you don't have a book whether you're going to get 1 or 2 star reviews.
Mhm.
And he said, I think it's better to have a book that has 1 or 2 star reviews than have no book at all. And then regret for not writing the book. So that's what kind of like shifted in me, saying I got to do something.
And how did you find the mastermind group and why join the one that you're in?
Well, it was partly kind of I'm not in it anymore, but because I wrote the book, and it was a little too expensive, for me to keep forward. But I did like the session with my mentor. I did like that, and I think accountability is so important. But I also think of taking action too, like because a lot of times people are like, someday I'm going to do this, someday I'm going to do that. No, when? Take action now.
And your book, Rise Above the Script, is not just, I'd love that. I won't put my words into it. Can you tell me about the title?
So rise above the script. I mean, I came up with that because I wasn't, obviously a performing artist. I wanted to use the script metaphor, but it's all about the inner voice, the inner critic, and rising above that and getting superior with that, and mastering, your internal world so that you're not dealing with the self-doubt and you're able to control and turn around the self-sabotage.
And this might have to be a topic for another time, but self-sabotage, a lot of people aren't aware of it. They're not, they might not be aware
Right.
of the title, but also when they're doing it, what type of, how would you advise
It's
someone to?
it's very subconscious. It's a very subconscious pattern. You don't realize you're doing it. Um, the main thing is like if you feel like things are going wrong in your life constantly, like you start having the victim mentality, nothing can go right. Most of the time, and this is gonna sound harsh, but it's people's own doing. When I see that, I'm like, you're doing something wrong. Either you're working with the wrong people, or you're not, or you're dropping the ball on things. So there's a whole reason why.
Okay, that's very, very exciting. I've had
Yeah.
so many self-sabotage patterns through kinesiology. That's been a thing we've
Hmm.
looked at deeply. What we're going to do to wrap up the podcast is to do a very quick rapid fire segment. So the first thing that
Sure.
springs to mind, but take your time to think about it. Before we start, how can people check out your book? It'll be in the episode notes below, so
Yeah,
people check it out.
it's on Amazon as well as Audible, so it's available as a regular book and an audio book, and an ebook, of course. So check that out.
Cool. And I believe, yeah, they're narrated as well, I believe. Um,
Yeah,
okay, ready to do the rapid fire segment.
sure.
Biggest pet peeve.
Biggest pet peeve is arrogance.
Something you want to get better at.
Uh, I guess even more assertiveness, speaking up for myself even more.
What are you most proud of?
My PhD in book.
Next big dream or goal?
Write 2 more books
Oh, two
in the
more.
next year.
Can you give me a bit of a
Yeah.
snapshot?
Well, one book is going to be about people pleasing in the martyr complex, uh, and that's going to be combined. And then another book is going to be on gaslighting, both in professional and personal relationships.
Oh, okay. We're going to have to do a part two and discuss that. What
I
would
would
you?
love to, yeah, to have that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a topic that I am very intrigued by, as people pleasing, of course. What would you do if you knew you could not fail?
Oh. probably accomplish, take over the world, I guess, in a sense.
Evil genius
Mm,
or like a positive superhero one?
Positive superhero, but I would definitely travel and do some selfish things too, like, go on trips and all that.
Nice. Any advice to actors who want to pursue acting?
Be in it for the long haul, train, but also really have a realistic understanding and that this is a career choice, that it may take 10 to 20 years before you actually see any traction.
Who is your dream client? It can be both from an acting perspective or, as someone wanting to see you for like hypnosis or NLP or
I
coaching.
don't know if I can say dream. I do wish I was able to work with like people like Robin Williams and Heath Ledger, because I would have been able to help them hopefully stop doing the actions that
Yeah.
ended their life, and did some intervention on them.
If you could go back to the aspiring coach or agent version of Albert, what would you say to yourself that you needed to hear? What you think you need to hear?
In the end, the people pleasing, would probably number one, and really don't be scared. Don't let fear, run you.
Good advice. And last question before I ask how people can follow you and check you out. What's the one question I should have asked you?
I don't know. I think you kind of asked everything. Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe even my why. Why do I do this? In a sense, and I will just say that I want to inspire people. I want to connect people. I want to change the world.
Brilliant. I have a similar why. It resonates very strongly. And before we go, how can people check out your socials and all of that cool stuff?
So you could check out my website, albertbramante.com, and check out the recordings. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. My LinkedIn is just Albert Bramante, and my Instagram is at Dr. Al Bramante. And feel free to DM me and just even mention the podcast, and and if I can support you in any way, I will.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you. Very inspiring. And I love your mindset. And yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you again for having me.
I love how Albert talks about reframing rejection and how it doesn't actually have anything to do with you. We can still learn and grow and become better, but his phrase, "your services aren't required today," is a great way to minimize the mental toll and acknowledge that sometimes factors beyond our control are at play. This is a reminder that rejection is not linked to your worth. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Rejection is not the end, just a step on the path. Anonymous. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.